Hello everybody. Today we are going to be discussing about the 10th chapter of the Economic Survey 2019-20, which addresses the entire rage and debate over GDP growth rates in India, the official method of their estimation, and why people have doubts and suspicions, and what is finally the answer that we have to this entire debate. It all started with an article in the Hindu newspaper which said that the chief economic advisor Krishnamurthy Subramaniam clarified that there was no basis or there was no evidence of misestimation of GDP. This debate started last year in 2019 when a paper by Arvind Subramaniam, which was backed by Harvard, said that the real growth rate in the economy during that time was nearly only about 4.5%. However, the official data presented it at 7%. This actually led to doubts being creeping into the minds of people, saying that there was probably a problem with how GDP was calculated in this country, which is why, despite a real on-ground scenario of 4.5% growth rate, still translated into 7% on the official record. So, before we go into what exactly the debate was, we'll take a quick look at how GDP is calculated in India. GDP in India is calculated via the value addition method. Now, under the value addition method, what we do is calculate the gross value added in each sector of the economy. So, how do you calculate value added of a product? The final price of the product minus the initial price of the product gives you the value added for that particular product. Now, this value added is called GVA at factor cost. GVA at factor cost is the basic value addition that has happened in the economy in that particular year. We first convert it into GVA at basic prices. Now, the only difference between basic prices and factor cost is something called production tax. Production tax are taxes which are levied up till the point of production. Also, they are independent of the volume being produced. So, a production tax example can be something like a land tax. It can be something of an example of a profession tax, a registration fee, and is independent of the volume. So, when you add the net production taxes, and when I use the word net, I mean taxes minus subsidies. When I add the net production taxes to the GVA at factor cost, I get GVA at basic prices. These basic prices need to be converted into market prices. As you all know, GDP is actually calculated in terms of market prices. The conversion from basic prices to market prices entails only one addition, which is the net product tax. Product tax is like a per unit tax. So, for example, an import tax or a service tax or an excise tax, it's basically per unit of the product. So, when you add the net product taxes to GVA at basic prices, you get the GDP at market prices, which is the final figure that you derive after having done this two-step process, that is GVA at factor cost, first converted into GVA at basic price. How do you do it? By adding net production taxes, and then GVA at basic prices being converted into GVA at market prices by adding net product taxes. This is a broad skeleton of how GDP is estimated in India. There are a large number of regulatory institutions like the SEBI, IRDA, which give you a comprehensive financial sector coverage. The Ministry of Corporate Affairs also takes database on manufacturing companies, and all of this is combined at aggregate and sectoral levels in order to calculate the final GDP of the country. What happened in a methodological change was revision of base year. So, as you all know, to calculate a growth rate, you need a current year, you need a base year, and then you just calculate percentage increment. The base year was revised from 2004-5 to 2011-12. Now, it's a known fact that a base year revision happens almost every 8 to 10 years. This particular time, the base year revision from 2004-5 to 2011-12 may have sparked controversy because of a number of reasons, which we are going to just discuss right now. People said that 2011 and 12 was not a very appropriate for using as a base year. And how this came about to be is that a base year is supposed to be a normal year, which is free from any kind of exogenous shocks, which displays a good, growing, stable year where everything was on track, economy and output were growing. But as a matter of reality, if you will see here, there was actually the absolute GDP in 2011 and 12 kind of contracted by 2.3%, which means that in this particular year, absolute GDP actually went down. And this was kind of criticized because once you're calculating percentage, if your base is very small, anything above the base looks good. So if a 3.5% will look good when your base is 2%, but if your base is say 8%, everything is going to look bad. So why did you choose a year which had such a low base only to make yourself be painted in a better light by actually kind of making everything look very glittery? Because as you see, the moment base year was revised, GDP growth rate went up sharply from 4.8% in the old series to 6.2% in the new series, which means that only because of the base year revision, you made the current GDP look very nice because your base year was not as nice, which means that it had a smaller growth rate. Similarly, manufacturing sector growth rate for 2013 and 14 swung from minus zero point 0.7 in the old series to 5.3% in the positive. This huge kind of variation sparked a debate which made people question that this rebasing was actually done to paint the economic scenario in a false light, which means that it was not the reality on ground. Also, people say that if really the GDP grew and if this was real growth, then this should have squared up with other indicators such as bank credit, industrial capacity utilization, fixed investment growth. But this was not the case because it did not really grow, and the indicators were not showing such a consistent, reliable one-on-one relationship with the GDP, which is what made people question the entire rebasing methodological change that happened. The another thing that sparked a very huge debate was the demonetization which occurred in 2016 November. Even the chief economist of IMF, Geeta Gopinath, said that demonetization actually hurt the economy. Yet the official GDP rate for that particular year was 8.2%, the highest in this entire decade. And when it has been, fair and square established that demonetization hurt GDP growth rate because of this adverse credit shock, how is it that in the new series, the ratio of investment to GDP actually went up to 12% when we all know that on account of demonetization, investment sharply declined in the economy? This is what sparked the entire debate about why this rebasing was done and why was it that 2011 and 12 was chosen as the base year despite all these issues at hand. And we all know that the CSO estimated value addition in the private corporate sector with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Now we all know that people have alleged that the ministry database on active companies was actually fake because many of the companies there, almost 42% of the sample companies were not traceable, had failed to provide information or had failed to provide audited accounts. So the entire figure of investment to GDP growing was maybe dubious in nature. So people have questioned the need for a review, why 2011 and 12 was chosen, and what exactly were the various arguments and counter arguments which were extended in this matter. We will now go on to analyze the answer to this entire debate, which is given by the government, extended in chapter 10th of the economic survey, where they clearly assert that there is no misestimation of the GDP. GDP did in fact grow in those years, and maybe what people are asserting to be a misestimation or an overestimation is actually explained by real economic indicators which are reliable in the economy. This will be analyzed in greater detail. We will just start off with understanding what exactly was the answer given by the government. As you may have already seen that there are a myriad number of arguments for and against making their points about how GDP has either been overestimated or it has been tweaked in a way to show the present political government in a better light. Today, we are really going to go and explore one of these arguments, which actually says that there has been no overestimation of the GDP. And I'm just going to go through the various points on how they base their arguments that GDP really has not been overestimated. And there might be other factors at play which are not really observable at this point of time. So let us begin by firstly talking about the DID methodology. This is a very commonly used methodology in econometrics, which basically talks about trying to understand what would have been had there been a counterfactual to this, that is, had there been no base year revision, then what would have been the GDP growth rate for India? And we'll go point by point into how this exactly translates for the problem at hand. To give you an analogy, imagine two people running temperature, and then one of them is administered a drug while the other one is not. So, while we are trying to measure the effectiveness of the drug, what we are going to do is primarily look at the person who was given the drug and record what is his improvement versus the control group, which is the person who was not given the drug. Now, this person who's in the control group will have shown any signs of betterment only because of extraneous factors, maybe rest, other things. And the person who's been given the pill will talk about the pill as well as all the extraneous factors. Subtracting both of these, we'll know that if this person shows some kind of more residual betterment, which may not have been attributed to any of the external factors which are shown in the control group, we'll clearly know that the drug is effective. Similarly, here we are comparing India with a host of other countries who have not gone this methodological revision but have many other factors which have contributed to their GDP growing also post 2011 and 12, which is exactly similar to how India's GDP also, kind of shot up, but that was also partly due to the methodological change. Now, just remember the term panel econometrics. It does not have much implication to what we are going to discuss, but it is one of the ways in which we can, look at long-term data and try to make sense of any trends that might have emerged from a particular panel. Just to give you a brief idea of what a base year is. So a base year is supposed to be a normal year. And when I say a normal year, I define it as a year which does not have any kind of extraneous demand or supply shocks, a year in which the pattern has not dramatically altered, in which nothing extraneous or exogenous has happened to the trend line that has been going across the years. So a normal year is defined as 1 year where everything has been as expected or in line with no major fluctuations. Now, India has been revising their base year time and again. Almost after every 8 to 10 years, they are supposed to update the base year to a next normal year so that it is more of a reflection of the current trends. So, after what really happened was the revision of the base year from 2004-5 to 2011-12. To understand the DID technology, you can see that the first bracket here actually reflects the change that India has undergone in its GDP growth rate post the revision. You can see the time frames being 2012 to 16 and 2002 to 11. 11 to 12 was the year where we had that break of technology, of methodology being revised. And the other bracket primarily corresponds to the controls, which is all the other countries. Now, India will exhibit a change in these not only because of the extraneous factors, but also the method, whereas the controls will only exhibit due to other factors. They did not go any kind of a methodological change. Without going into the math of it, I'll just move to the results, and the results clearly state that this particular model overestimated India's GDP by 2.77%. In very simple terms, what this means is that had there been no methodological change, the entire GDP of India would have been 2.77% lesser. So, what this model is trying to tell us is that because of the methodological change, 2.77% has been added or has been an overestimate to the GDP of India. But we can also clearly see that the GDP for 51 other countries have also been misestimated anywhere between this particular range. This model also says one more thing that this 2.77% is actually kind of an exaggeration because here if you will clearly see the comparison between India and other countries is just like the comparison between apples and oranges. Why? Because other countries have a lot of extraneous unobserved differences, which means that the factors, say for example, productivity growth or say government policies that happened in these countries will not be the same for that happening in India, which means that you cannot subtract the extraneous factors of other countries from India and then say that the residual amount is actually methodological change, which means that there are unobserved differences, and which is exactly what this paper seeks to kind of explore, that why is it that when people claim, Subramaniam claimed that there's a 2.77% overestimation of GDP, why is that not true is something that this paper is going to explore. First argument that they make is that the fundamental assumption of using a DID, difference in difference model, is that India has to follow a same parallel comparable trend with other control groups, which means that if you were to compare India with other countries and see that what is the isolated effect of methodology after having subtracted all the efforts of extraneous factors, you will kind of have to understand that India must be growing just comparably with other countries. But on the contrary, this figure makes it very clear that this was not the case. There have been instances where India, which is in the green line vis-a-vis other countries, which is the dotted orange line, have been moving in opposite directions, which means that the DID model is not a perfect fit here. And the results of the DID model, which says that there is a 2.77% over exaggeration, may not be completely true. The second point that is very important and which will form the base of the further discussion is that there is also a variable bias, which means that you might not have considered all the factors which have contributed to GDP change, and you would see that GDP is sum total of the consumption, the investment, the government expenditure, and the net exports of an economy. So what is the basic argument that this chapter is trying to make? It's saying that you may not have considered all the different factors that can contribute to GDP growth, and that is why you're getting a very large residual, and you are saying that this is over exaggeration. But there might have been some particular variable that shot up after 2011-12, which is why the GDP actually grew, and you cannot attribute that variable's contribution to GDP as nothing but a methodology change. So you bring in more variables to explain the GDP growth, and you'll automatically see that the residual value is going down. Now, just look at this model here. It's a simple regression model which says that India's GDP, which is this, is explained by multiple explanatory variables, which are the XIs, and we also have a control variable for India, which is India's specific factors. Now, I'll just show you the results of this. You should clearly be able to see that 2.77% here is what was earlier estimated as GDP overestimate. Means 2.77 is the residual, which cannot be attributed to any of the factors which are explaining GDP growth, and therefore we earlier concluded that 2.77% is only attributed to methodology change. Post having included more variables, earlier we only had real indicators of exports, imports, and credits. Now other explanatory variables like real growth in agriculture and services are also added. And while this is added, you will see that with higher number of explanatory variables here, the kind of variable omission bias goes down, and as a result of which we say that the misestimation, the 2.77 residual now falls to 1.18, which clearly means that as you add more and more number of variables, explanatory variables, you will see that the residual amount goes down. And this is clear because earlier we did not add real growth in agriculture and services also as a part to explain GDP. And it's very clear and intuitive that agriculture's growth, like more agricultural produce, will contribute to higher GDP, and more produce of services, more trade of services will also contribute to higher GDP. These two variables were not included as explanatory variables in GDP, which is why such a huge residual amount was only whole and sole attributed to methodology change. This proves that the basic model, which had only three variables, export, import, and credit, overestimated the level of overestimation, which means that at max, at best, the overestimation that can be attributed to methodology change is only 1.18% and not this huge figure of 2.77%. Moving on, India also has a very high amount of informal employment, and large part of the population is neither in education nor in employment or training, which means that there might be a lot of other unaccounted economic activity happening. Now just see all the unorganized sectors which are not registered anywhere and which do not make their way into the national accounts do not really mean that no growth is happening. Just because we are not able to capture that by formalizing them and bringing them into the system so that we can collect data, doesn't mean that no growth is happening in India. This is one point that they are trying to make. And now comes the most important part of this chapter, which talks about fixed factors. Now, it's very intuitive that for every particular for every particular country in this world, institutional and legal establishments are going to differ. So, for example, the kind of governance, the kind of government policies, the law and order, the judiciary, their efficiency, there are many things that vary between countries. Also, the will of political leadership, which may be more inclined towards public investment or the role of government or private sector. All of this varies in a huge magnitude between countries, which means that you cannot compare India with controlled countries because the internal factors which are not observable will actually make a difference between both. So, for example, if you're comparing India and you say you're comparing it with China, you cannot, because the entire structure, the democracy versus the autocracy part of it differs. So, you cannot be saying that, okay, China grew at this much percentage and they did not have methodology change. If we subtract that from how much was the growth rate for India, we'll know that this much is attributed to technology change. This is the basic argument that this entire chapter is trying to make, that you cannot compare the apples with oranges until you try to standardize them. And one of the most interesting facts that I found in this chapter was that if you included these kind of fixed factors in the regression model, which means if you added more and more number of explanatory variables here and said that this might also be one of the factors contributing to GDP, India specific factors, if you added, you would know that the 2.77 overestimation actually disappears. So, for example, if you added, say, some government scheme, some healthcare scheme that came out, and you said that even that contributed to higher GDP. So, this 2.77 that you are saying that, it can't be attributed to any of this, which means that it is solely due to methodology change, this will actually disappear. And I would also like to point out here that only by introducing country-specific variables, you will be able to get an unbiased estimate of the effect of methodology change. So you cannot, what this article is saying is that this DID here that you did, where you said that, you subtract this from what India has experienced and you will isolate the effect of methodology change, that is actually not true. And this is exactly what is being pointed out here. The last point here says that the amount of misestimation that disappears due to inclusion of fixed effects is 1.68%, which means that there are some unobservable fixed effects which are exclusive to India, and they are actually explaining 1.68%, which means that you can't just say that 2.77% is the residual and it is going to be whole and soul attributed to methodology change. Moving on, this is one of the tables that we took from the chapter, which clearly says that the DID model has misestimated these percentages for all these countries. So if you see that almost for every country, there is a certain degree of misestimation. And once you have included fixed effects, this misestimation will kind of disappear. So all we are saying is that do not, rely whole and soul on the DID model. The DID model does not consider fixed effects. And what are these fixed effects? They are just country-specific internal things which are kind of unique to every country. The political as well as legal as well as the institutional establishments of each country, which kind of create the investment climate for a country, are going to be different. So once you include country-specific fixed effects, all of this misestimation will prove to be baseless. Moving on. There was another mechanism suggested by Subramaniam, who said that, okay, fine, since we can't estimate what is the isolated effect of methodology change, what we can do is compare GDP with various subsectors. So, for example, see that in one particular year, say 2017-18, if GDP grew, exports should also grow. Or if GDP grew, petroleum should also be higher. So what we're going to do is see that, let's say that if GDP increased, of course, the subcomponents of GDP must also have increased. So in order to check whether this is true or not, they actually did a time series study here from 1980s to the 2015, and they saw that the relationship of these indicators itself along with the GDP is unstable. Sometimes in some year when GDP grew, exports actually fell. In some years it rose. So these are all unreliable and unstable indicators, which means that you cannot rely on saying that if GDP grew in a particular year, it is very important that these indicators must have also moved in the same direction. The best way to find this out is to compare the relationship of this particular indicator with the old series as well as with the new series. And once you do that, you will see that there is actually no divergence. So whatever was the relationship of any particular indicator with the old series, the same will be the relationship with the new series as well. Just to bring out a few concluding arguments, in a correctly specified econometric model, GDP overestimation completely disappears. So all we are trying to say is that do not, prematurely conclude that 2.77% is the overestimation of GDP. Include more and more variables, which can be potentially explanatory variables for why the GDP might have been higher, and you will see that you will have almost no residual. That means that there will always be some fixed factors which are country specific, which will be able to explain why the GDP was higher. At the same time, one very important thing that we can remember is that there is a study which claims that 10% increase in new firm creation will lead to GDP growth by 1.8%. And after 2014, this new firm creation actually shot up in India, which means that the GDP grew because at the district level, new firms were created. There were high and high number of businesses coming up. And also, this creation was highest in the services sector. And we all know that services sector contributes the maximum to GDP. So this can be a more intuitive reasoning to why you think GDP grew. And obviously, despite all of the arguments that we've made, and despite the counter arguments that we've seen, which clearly say that the methodology change is wrong and it's politically motivated, etc., you can see that there is a clear need to ramp up spending on statistical infrastructure, because it is very important for us to know what should be an appropriate base year. It is also important for us to be able to estimate GDP correctly, because GDP has long-term implications. For example, GDP forecasts for the next year kind of sets the tone for investment, because investors heavily rely on the growth prospect of a particular country before there is any kind of capital inflow into that country in the form of FDI or in the form of domestic investment, which is why correct estimation of GDP is very important for us to understand investor sentiments and investor climate. This is all about chapter 10.